Hello everyone. So we will be presenting on the phylum Nematomorpha. So within this phylum, they have several names they go by. They're known as either horsehair worms, hair worms, or Gordian worms. I'd like to use the term Gordian worms throughout the presentation. So in case you hear me say horsehair worms or hair worms, just know I'm referring to the phylum Nematomorpha. So these are unsegmented worms. They're bilateral symmetrical, triploblastic, and pseudocoelomates. But I'd like to talk a little bit more about the pseudocoelom just because they are different within the orders that I will be discussing next. So now I'd like to mention that these are parasitic worms and in their larvae phase. So the larvae phase are parasitic in arthropods, but as adults, they are free-living worms. So also note that they're not parasitic to humans or, let's say, pets or livestock, but there have been a few cases where humans have ingested some of these worms. So be careful, don't accidentally ingest some worms. Okay, so we have two orders here in the phylum Nematomorpha. So here on the left is the order Gordioidea, and on the right is the order Nectonematoidea. So in the order Gordioidea, they're mainly found in freshwater, and the larvae can parasitize aquatic and terrestrial insects. Also shown in this illustration, they lack rows of setae. And the order Nectonematoidea, they're mainly marine planktonic worms. The larvae phase parasitize crustaceans. And the locomotion is different in these orders. So for example, in the order Nectonematoidea, movement is done by using the body wall muscles with the help of the natatoid bristles, right here shown. The bristles aid in swimming and from keeping the worm from sinking. In the order Gordioidea, now these Gordian worms move by using their longitudinal muscles to move in a wave-like motion or by like uncoiling and coiling themselves. So next, this is the cross-section of the order Nectonematoidea here on the left. Now, the pseudocoelom is visible and there's enough space. There's no problem. Either pseudocoelom or blastocoelom, same thing. Now here on the right is a cross-section that belongs in the order Gordioidea. Now here, the pseudocoelom is completely covered in mesenchyme. So therefore, it doesn't really have a particular body cavity, just because, as you can see, the blastocoelom or pseudocoelom is reduced completely by the mesenchyme, which is shown as like little dots. So, yep. And then, so next I'll discuss the feeding and the digestion. So these Gordian worms will most likely only feed on the host in their juvenile phase. During this phase, the juveniles will take in nutrients from the host through its thin body walls. And as adults, when they're adults, they'll most likely rely on that stored nutrients. Also, the intestine is made up of a midgut and a hindgut. So the midgut acts as a digestive gut, and while the hindgut acts as a cloaca. And lastly, there have been evidence that the Gordian worms will change the insect's behavior that will cause the insect to seek water. Because their hosts are usually like terrestrial insects such as a grasshopper or cricket, and as we all know, like they don't want to be close to water. These worms will like alter their behavior, and so that that their host, either a cricket or an insect, will go towards the water so that the worm will emerge from the host. It's really incredible. And yeah, so before I pass it on to my partner, I will say there are videos of these Gordian worms coming out of their host. So I would definitely recommend watching some. It's incredible. It's really cool. So I give it 10 out of 10. So yeah, definitely watch some videos. Okay, thank you.
Hello, everybody. This is Bilal Say, and I'm going to be continuing this presentation. So thank you, Natalie, for the start of the presentation. All right. So for the reproductive organs of the Nematomorphan species, there's many different features that are possible. So for the female Nematomorpha, they have elongated ovaries, and in their ovaries, those are their reproductive organs. So as a feature of having those, they tend to lay millions of eggs in the fertilization process. So usually the female fertilization would occur internally for the any like Nematomorpha female organism. For male organisms, they would have at least one or two pair of testes that would be used for reproductive function. And also, many different species also are hermaphroditic, which contain male and female organs, so they can have both traits of male and female organs, like whether they're having like many eggs or both testes. That can be possible. In females, the lopophoral glands are internal, and usually the fertilization occurs in the Pharonopsis harmeri. For generally, as a note of Nematomorpha, they are dioecious and they have the ability to reproduce sexually. The life cycle of the Nematomorphans usually begins as a larva and develops into a semi-sessile. It begins as a larva egg and develops into a semi-sessile larva or eventually a juvenile. But this process can take up to 4 to 20 weeks to fully occur, from turning to a fertilized egg and larva to a juvenile. Usually they have 2 or 3 rings of cuticular hooks and stylets. They use those as tools to attach to their host. So like usually the Nematomorpha can be parasites. So like those organisms would attach their hosts using the tools that they have. In their life cycle, usually for Gordian eggs, it would take 1 to 2 weeks for the period to occur. Gas exchange and excretion for Nematomorpha. Pharonoids, they have 2 major longitudinal vessels that run from the lopomorphal end of the body to the stomachic end. And these major vessels, they can't be specifically identified in terms of their region, due to them being laterally and also ventrically on the body cavity of the organism. Due to the vessel being hard to identify in its position, there's 2 terms that are used to explain the direction of the blood flow relative to the lopophore. They are afferent and efferent. The efferent vessels would be the unbranched vessels that extend from the end bulb to the base of the lopophore, and the efferent vessels would be the joining vessels that join them into the ring vessel. The efferent vessels adjoin the efferent ring vessels, and that's how they would work. So the efferent vessel would be the vessel that is draining blood away from the lopophore. So for our class questions, number 1, In the reproductive process of female Nematomorpha, how many eggs are usually laid in the fertilization process? There are usually millions of eggs that are laid in the female Nematomorpha fertilization process as a result of the reproductive ovary. This does not mean, though, that the male and female reproductive organs cannot be both present. Number 2, what is the sister group of the phylum Nematomorpha? The sister group of the phylum Nematomorpha would be phylum Nematoda. Here is our reference page where we got our information for our slides and also our speech. Thank you guys and have a great day.